Hey everyone, welcome back to Ramey Works 360. In today's video, it's going to be a little bit different. The other day, I came home from work to find my 2-year-old and 4-year-old had snuck into my hobby room and decided to help me paint my US gun and mortar team set. They got a little creative with various colors of paint all over the table, but surprisingly, I think they actually did a pretty good job. I think they were referencing the figure that I had painted a couple weeks ago. Now, the real question is, can I fix this? Can I paint over their work and still use the miniatures for my diorama? Well, let's find out together. If I do fail at this, luckily I did buy an extra set in which I have started to assemble. I decided to go with field drab for the pans. So I ended up deciding to hand paint all 7 figures instead of using the airbrush. I wanted to keep things personal and really take my time bringing them back to life. I started with the pants, laying down a solid base coat of field drab. It's got that perfect tone for worn US Army fatigues, earthy, not too green, and easy to build on later with highlights. Next, I moved on to the jackets. For the anti-air gunner and the two M1917 30 cal crew members, I went with a khaki for their jackets. I like the contrast it adds, a little variety, while still keeping that field uniform look consistent across the team. After that, I painted all the boots using brown leather. It gives a nice rich tone with just enough red in it to stand out once I start weathering later. I'll likely come back with a black or brown wash to dirty them up a little bit and pull out the details. Next, I'll be moving on to the jacket, painting it olive drab. To mix it, if you don't have it, you can use 2 parts flat green and 1 part flat brown or field drab. You could also use US dark green, which gives it a richer, deeper tone. To mix it, you use 1 part olive green and 1 part black, and a touch of khaki. If you want to go for more of the faded green worn look or sun bleached look, you want to do olive drab plus small amounts of buff or deck tan. For the Mortar Team, I went with olive drab with small amounts of buff to lighten it up, giving it that worn look. For the Bazooka Team, I went with dark green to give it a little variety, and also as if they're a little bit in a shaded area. So I'll be starting out with the olive drab with some buff, and then I'll mix them together. And again, for my base coat, I'll try and apply in thin layers with even coats with a fine detail brush. I want to ensure I have full coverage, especially around folds and seams. I then mix in a little more buff and I start hitting some of the equipment, the canteen pouch, the belt, etc. Then I use black for their pistol handle and, of course, the mortar's phone. Now on to dry brushing. I go ahead and mix olive drab and buff together so I can really bring out the highlights. Next, onto the bazooka team. I'll be using dark green and along with some buff to slowly lighten it up through the layers. Again, I use a lighter shade green to paint the equipment. Mix up a combination of dark green and buff, and then it's back to dry brushing. I want to bring out all of the folds and all the highlights and all the areas where it looks like the uniform and equipment would get worn. Now I come back in with some khaki to paint up the leggings. The leggings on the uniform were used to keep debris out between the pants and shoes or boots. Now, I'm moving on to skin tones. You can use a variety of colors for this, especially depending on the look you're going for. Anything from burnt red, brown sand, basic skin tone, even sunny skin tone for lighter highlights. For the skin tones, I'll be using a number 1 Kolinsky brush. For this demonstration, I'm starting out with a base coat of burnt red. It might look a little dark and warm at first, but it gives a nice foundation and a bit of warmth to the overall skin tone. Perfect for layering on top. Once that dries, I'll be going over it with a mid-tone of brown sand. I'll be brushing this on gently, letting some of that red peek through in the shadows and deeper areas of the face and hands. It adds a natural variation without needing a heavy wash right away. And here they all are, all finished and back in action. What started as a surprise paint job for my kids turned into a fun little rescue project, and honestly, I couldn't be happier with how they turned out. It was a great chance to slow down, hand paint everything, and try different techniques along the way, from base coats and shading to subtle highlights and weathering. These miniatures aren't just part of a diorama anymore, they're a little memory that makes them a little bit more special. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I've got more painting, building, and storytelling content on the way, right here on Ramey Works 360. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.